Suzy Wrong, Joy Drive's film, TV and theatre reviewer.
So every week we get to chat to Suzy Wrong on Joy Drive, and this week it is my first time to chat, and we are talking about VENENO,
which is on iView. Suzy, welcome back.
Thank you. Congrats to all Victorians for approaching the end of their final lockdown.
Oh, thank you. We're just behind you.
Yeah, just a little bit, but, you know, I can tell you that it is very nice to be almost back to normal.
Suzy, today we're going to be talking about VENENO on iView. Do you want to give us an overview of what it's about?
Cristina La Veneno was a Spanish sex symbol, a transgender icon who had risen to fame in the 1990s when television had discovered her and offered her a platform to present her outrageous self to late-night audiences. In the 8-part series VENENO, now streaming on ABC iView, we delve deep into her magnificent life, the highs and the many, many lows, to explore what it must be like to live on the fringes of society, to not be able to adhere to acceptable norms, and to be perceived constantly as a bane, an annoyance and threat to what the mainstream wishes everything to be. It is a good time for us today to take a look back at the woman La Veneno was. 30 years ago, trans people lived almost entirely in the underground. Many engaged unhappily in sex work, and many abused their bodies with drugs and surgeries so that they may survive in a world that insisted strictly on the binary. It is therefore understandable that a show like VENENO is only now able to see the light of day. All the things we once thought were trashy, obscene, and unquestionably repulsive are now beginning to be appreciated in a new way. In 2021, sex positivity has become normalized, and the notion of gender is fast shedding its traditional meanings, leading to a more empathetic interpretation of people and stories from the past. Today, I stand so firmly and proudly on the shoulders of LGBTQ forebears like La Veneno, but I never knew to celebrate her and her choices. People like her had terrified me because I never had that kind of courage to be so completely authentic. I would have looked at La Veneno with disdain, where in fact the only valid hate should have been for those who had ridiculed and objected to her very existence. It is probably a stretch to think of her now as a role model, but although she had made a lot of bad decisions, her admirable, indomitable spirit is something all queer people need to recognize and cherish in ourselves. Warren, wasn't it great?
Oh, I thought it was absolutely amazing. But I just want to say thank you for that overview and for sharing your personal thoughts there, Suzy. I found that very touching listening to you.
I just got goosebumps. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a very sensitive thing for a lot of trans people, I think, having sort of not, very few sort of people before us to look up to. And, you know, back in the day, it was literally, you know, like dead hookers that were the only examples out there. So it was very hard, yeah.
Suzy, I think I've got about 2 episodes to go. I was trying to squeeze it in, but I absolutely loved it. At first I watched it and I thought, oh my goodness, there's subtitles, there's about 3 stories. I had no idea what was going on. But you know what? The first episode, you know, when the pilot episode is really, really good, when by the end of the episode, it all comes together. And by the end of episode 1, I was completely hooked on it, and I couldn't stop and wanted to get on to episode 2. I love the fact that the journalist is writing the memoir of VENENO, and that actually becomes the basis of this story as well. And I love that that's how that's incorporated into it. And I think it was called, I was looking at it today, the actual memoir that was written was, because it's a true story, was Not a Whore, Not a Saint, The Memories of La Veneno. I just absolutely loved it. It's, you know, you look at her first TV show appearance, and I think she was originally invited onto TV because of the shock factor, you know, let's get her on and shock our audience. But how good was it that it turned in that she became so popular? And Suzy, it was almost like you could see the change that was happening over in Spain in terms of how they viewed trans women. And I felt like it was almost, even though it's about, VENENO herself, it's also like a documentary about how change embraces trans and how their attitudes towards it completely changed. Did you feel that as well?
Yeah, it was important to have that journalist that you were talking about. Her name is Valeria Vega. And her story, because she's a much younger trans woman, and she started transition after meeting VENENO. So that story, that contrast that between generations was so valuable to observe. You know, we look at, what are things like now. You know, like she is respected journalist that writes for Vanity Fair and all that, and her you know, what's available to her now is so different because of these stories that these lives that have to go through really tough times. And I think it was, you were able to sort of draw the line connecting one generation to another in Love on Veneno, and I think that's very valuable.
And Valeria, the journalist, also we were exposed to the transition process as well. And what a beautiful girl she is. And, you know, you could see the contrast in their mothers as well between Valeria and Veneno, and you could see what the difference was between a mother that embraces you and loves you for who you are and an abusive mother and what impact that had. And I found that really sad watching the whole series, and Veneno herself constantly seeking acceptance and love from a mother who was incapable of doing it. And I just thought, wow, this was really sad, the impact that a loveless childhood has on someone in their adult life. And of course, Suzy, there were a couple of violent scenes in there that were just absolutely horrific as well.
Yeah, a lot of violence, but it is, you know, a long series, so I don't feel like it was filled with violence. I feel like there were a lot of joyful moments to it. The Veneno's mother was, you know, a horrible character, but I think because it was a true story, it's because they were trying to portray a true story that we didn't get sort of an airbrushed version of a mother, and they were forced to sort of show the truth of the, you know, the cruelty that many of us have had to deal with. And I think that cruelty was just felt so authentic, and I think it kind of shows with so much clarity why Veneno became the woman that she became, you know, and why she was never okay, even to the last breath.
Absolutely. Suzy, I've got to say, last year, Pose, I think, was my TV series of the year that you introduced us to, and I think that's probably been the benchmark that I measure everything to. I've got to say, this is running as my number one for 2021, and I think it may even beat Pose. I think it is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no question, I agree with you. That the authenticity in this is missing in Pose. I think Pose has so much fantasy to it, which was what we loved about it. But when we watch Veneno, we understand, wow, the authenticity does so much more to your spirit as the viewer, especially as queer people, how it resonates. And the grittiness, you know, and that sort of Spanish-European tone of it, it was something that I guess maybe for us living in Australia to be so refreshing. You know, the way they talk, the way they express beauty, and the way they express, you know, depth and meaning of what happens in life is, you know, is so profound. I think what it's trying to say.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Suzy. I'm definitely going to be adding this to my list, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be as well. Veneno on ABC iView. What is the homework for next week so I can pass on notes to the next and friends of Warren?
The next one is The Bachelorette, which
Yes!
tomorrow in a worldwide first, with contestants male and female vying for the heart of the lovely Brooke Blurton on Channel 10 and 10 Play.
Well, we are speaking with Brooke Blurton tomorrow on our show as well, and I am very keen to watch that. I will give my notes to Warren so that, you know, he doesn't necessarily have to watch it.
I will watch it because Suzy has said so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suzy. When will we chat to you next?
And I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you. It's Suzy Wrong. You're on Joy Drive.